Morning troops, Area Veteran Dave here. This morning I'm off for a walk to explore an ancient part of Southend-on-Sea in the search of a Saxon king. Or is it a Saxon prince? I'm walking around the area of Prittlewell. The Prittlewell Brook here is an ancient waterway that runs into the North Sea via the River Roach, and this area was settled back as far as 10,000 years ago during the late Stone Age. The man I'm looking for today lived over 1,400 years ago, when this area was a thriving Saxon settlement and Essex was a kingdom in its own right. The name Prittlewell is derived from the Saxon name Prittlewella, which means babbling stream. Back in 2003, Southend Council embarked on a road widening scheme and called in archaeologists from the Museum of London to investigate a rather unassuming grass verge opposite Priory Park. Some Saxon high status and warrior graves had been found in this area before, during construction in the 1890s and 1930s, so some Saxon finds were expected. However, when they put the first exploratory trench into the grass verge, they literally struck gold. They found a burial chamber, approximately 13 foot square, that was full of very high status grave goods. Some of them were found to have been imported from the continent and as far away as Syria. The archaeologists quickly established that this wasn't just high status, this was a burial of royal status. The burial chamber would have originally been lined on all sides and covered by a roof of oak panelling, evidence of which was found when examining the soil. Although the remains of any body had been completely consumed by the acidity in the soil, some fragments of tooth enamel were found. I couldn't come to this area and not mention Prittlewell Priory behind me. Established in the 12th century, it would have been home for up to 18 monks. The lands that the Priory originally owned stretched right down to the coastline here, where a small fishing community started to grow. This became known as the South End of Prittlewell. Over the centuries, that small fishing community grew into a large town, and Southend became the dominant name for this area. During the 19th century, when Southend became a popular seaside resort, the Victorians added on-sea to its name. Who would have thought that the city of Southend-on-Sea came from such humble beginnings? It was established that the body would have been laid on a wooden table or within a coffin. The placement of gold foil crucifixes over the eyes and Frankish coins in the hands, as well as a gold belt buckle and gold clasps for footwear, puts the estimated height of the individual at 5 foot 8 inches tall. Along with the tooth fragments and the placing of the wealthy grave goods, including weapons and feasting vessels, archaeologists determined that this was the grave of a male adult or adolescent. Many of the grave goods and artefacts can be viewed at Southend's Central Museum and is definitely worth a visit if in the local area. Entry is free, but please consider making a donation. This will ensure items can be enjoyed by future generations. So who was buried at Prittlewell? The East Saxon Kingdom of Essex during the 6th and 7th centuries was a lot larger than the county of today and incorporated London as its capital. It was always thought that the royal family of Essex would have been buried there in London. Initial dating of the chamber was estimated at the early 7th century, which would put King Sigebert, who died at 616 AD, or one of his 3 sons who ruled concurrently and died fighting the West Saxons, as the likely candidates for our mystery Saxon King. So why Prittlewell? The Thames, even back then, would have been of strategic importance, with trade coming in from the continent. Whoever controlled the Thames Gateway was someone of extreme importance and power. I'm stood outside St Mary's Church in Prittlewell, which was established in the 12th century around the same time as the Priory. However, the remains of this archway, which has been made up of old Roman tiles and forms part of the northern wall, has been dated back to the 7th century. It's likely that the earlier structure here was a place of worship in the centre of a 7th century Anglo-Saxon settlement. This period is the very beginning of written history in Anglo-Saxon culture, and any written documents are scarce at best. It is known that King Sigebert was an early convert to Christianity, where his 3 sons remained of the pagan faith. The burial chamber is slightly unusual in fact that the occupant was clearly of Christian faith due to the gold crucifixes placed over his eyes. However, due to the presence of lots of grave goods, this suggests a pagan influence. An archaeologist's initial assessment was that this was indeed the grave of King Sigebert of Essex. A Time Team documentary with the great Sir Tony Robinson that aired in 2005 agreed with this assessment. Anyone interested in this subject can find the documentary on YouTube entitled The King of Bling. In recent years, modern carbon dating techniques have dated the tomb between 580 and 605 AD, some 11 years before King Sigebert died. Archaeologists now believe that the likely candidate is Saxon, who is the brother of Sigebert, who died in the late 6th century. A new pub opened in Priory Crescent in 2014. The brewery initially planned to call the pub the Saxon Prince. However, after pressure from a local historical group who are convinced the burial is of the king, the pub was eventually named the Saxon King. I'm now on the mound that marks where the burial chamber was found, and there is a plaque at my feet that marks the final resting place of the Prittlewell Prince, although I can't help but think it's deserving of a little bit more. Perhaps the occupant wouldn't be too displeased to know that the pub named in his honour is literally just 200 yards in that direction. One could argue that the Great British Pub is the modern day equivalent to the 6th and 7th century Anglo-Saxon feasting halls. Did someone say pub? So, King Sigebert or Prince Saxon? I guess we'll never know. What we do now know is this area was of significant importance to the early Anglo-Saxons in this area and was the home to the earliest Christian Saxon burial ever discovered. I think that deserves a toast. Thanks for the history. Who would have thought that Southend-on-Sea, the home of jellied eels, an iconic pier and Essex boy races, would have such fascinating history? It just goes to show that our history is all around us. All you need to do is to go out and look for it.